The Stafford Voice.
Profiles in history. He was one of the wealthiest men in Philadelphia, and when it mattered most, he wasn't afraid to put his money where his mouth was. George Clymer was born in Philadelphia on March 16, 1739. He was orphaned roughly a year later when his mother died. At the age of 7, he lost his father. It was his uncle, William Coleman, who took up the responsibility of raising and informally educating him. Now, Coleman was a wealthy Philadelphian merchant and friend of Benjamin Franklin, and by the time his uncle would pass away, Clymer would be made a full partner in the firm. Soon afterwards, he merged the business with Reese Meredith's to form the firm Meredith and Clymer. The merger didn't stop there. As a matter of fact, Clymer took it one step further, and on March 22, 1765, he married Meredith's daughter, Elizabeth. Together, they would have 9 children, 4 of which would die in infancy. And historians are debating right now whether he had at least 1 child or more before marrying Elizabeth. However, George Clymer was a man of his business, so it should come as no surprise that he became motivated by the impact of the British economic restrictions on his business. And in a 1773 town meeting, those present made him chairman of a committee to persuade fellow merchants to refuse to handle tea the British taxed. On July 29, 1775, he was appointed as one of the Continental Congress's first treasurers. And it was his job to help raise money to support Washington's army in Boston. Clymer believed so much in the idea of independence that he would aid in underwriting the war by exchanging his own money for continental currency. Now, believe it or not, when the vote for independence came in 1776, several of Philadelphia's delegates voted against it. They were replaced as quick as possible with patriots that favored independence, one of which was George Clymer. And he became a delegate on July 20th. And even though he was too late to vote, it was his, quote, dearest wish to sign the Declaration of Independence, and on August 2nd, he did. And later that year in December, when the British troops were close enough to threaten Philadelphia, Congress fled to Baltimore. 3 would be left behind to conduct business: George Clymer, Robert Morris, and George Walton. It was exhausting and demanding work. After a few of Washington's victories, Congress returned in March 1777. Now, Clymer's health would cause him to take a leave of absence, and a few months later, in July, Congress called on Clymer to investigate the condition of the Army and the abuses in the commissary department. During his time away on September 11th, 1777, the British were victorious in Philadelphia at the Battle of Brandywine. Afterwards, British troops detoured to Clymer's home, roughly 20 miles outside of the city, to loot and vandalize it and drive his wife and children to hide in the nearby woods. In 1780, he worked with Robert Morris to create the Bank of North America, the first national bank. Clymer left Congress in 1772, and being a family man and having wanted the family to stay together, the whole family would move so his sons could attend Princeton. After moving, George served in Pennsylvania's House of Representatives. One of the key issues he would undertake was promoting prison reform, and he would work to keep the National Bank of North America going. In 1787, he became a delegate in the Constitutional Convention, one of only 6 signers of the Declaration of Independence to do so. He didn't want the Bill of Rights or other amendments to be inserted into the text of the Constitution. He wanted the unaltered text to, quote, remain a monument to justify those who made it. And ultimately, he got his wish, as all amendments are appended onto the end of the document. Washington put him in charge of collecting taxes on alcohol. The Federalists thought it was the best option to get the nation out of debt. However, the Anti-Federalists' opinion was that the alcohol taxes reflected those Britain imposed before the war. Many others agreed, some violently, leading to what was called the Whiskey Rebellion. Now, because Clymer was the collector, he was hated. And President Washington called out the militia to put down the rebellion, ultimately leading one of Clymer's sons that was in the militia to be killed in action against the rebels. Reeling from their loss in 1795, George Clymer took his wife on a trip to Georgia to try and negotiate peace between the Cherokee and Creek Indian confederacies and the settlers. It was his opinion that the settlers were the primary cause of tensions, as they had been driving the Indians off their lands without any form of compensation. This negotiation marked the end of his public life, and in his later years he was the president of the Philadelphia Bank, as well as serving in other civic organizations. On January 23, 1813, George Clymer passed away in Morrisville, Pennsylvania, at the age of 73. And that is this week's Profiles in History.